born September 1923, which makes me a little over 78 years old, and been retired for a few years now. This, I'd like to start this by back about the time when Russia was beaten up on Finland. Now that's about the time frame that I became interested in what was happening in the world. We didn't have the newspaper coverage, we didn't have TV, of course, and limited use of the radio. And we had a weekly newspaper, about like the local paper here.
And where, this was in
Kennewick, Washington.
Kennewick, Washington.
Yeah. And the only time you got to see really what was happening and was you'd get into a movie. You'd go to a movie. Here they had the newsreels, and or some of those old Thomas and Merle and a whole bunch of them, and they had the actual pictures. Most of this entailed what Japan was doing to China and Mongolia and anybody else that got in their way, all the Pacific Islands, all that stuff. And a lot of it was pretty well hidden, but pretty hard to hide the magnitude that was happening over there. When I first started thinking things are a little amiss here. It shouldn't be the way it is. And,
so you would have been in high school about this time?
I was in high school, yeah. And that was back in 35 and 36. I graduated from high school in 1942. That gives you kind of a time frame. And then on the other side, here Russia jumped on Finland. And really, just as they have seaports in various places, I think it's about the only reason they would do something like that. And I don't know, Finland itself had some mining and some oil and stuff, but it's a pretty small country. And Finland did a good job of holding them off there for several years. And they kind of gained the respect of the free world then. And while we're on this free world thing, we probably, well, maybe it's a little previous here too, but on one side we had Japan, on one side we had Germany, and south of there, between Africa and the European continent, we had Italy. And that was the three perpetrators in the Axis that was against the United States and England and the whole free world. And Russia never was a big friend of the United States, and I don't know how good they are right today, but we needed an ally between us and Germany, and so we opted to help Russia after they got done with Finland, because that kind of upset the whole world. That wasn't too good. And they finally did away with Finland, and they were occupied through the whole World War II. And but then somebody had to step in, and because the next move and then Germany jumped in, of course, took Poland and all the Balkan nations. And then we had to have somebody there to keep Russia preoccupied, so that they couldn't jump on us. And I think at the drop of a hat, they would have jumped on the free world, Russia would have. And that would raise up with the free world. So we opted to furnish them airplanes and tanks and trucks, ammunition, and food, and everything else you could forget. And Roosevelt, he's kind of a devious guy in a lot of ways. he didn't dare come out and say, well, I think we better declare war on Russia or declare war on Italy or something like that. I don't think he could. There was a big feeling in America that we should be isolated over here. Just let them have their war over there, and out in the Pacific have their war over there, and leave us alone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a fool's paradise, because as soon as they take one country, they're going to step to the next one, and the next one pretty quickly got the whole world. That was Japan's aim, that was Russia's aim, and that was Germany's aim, and Italy was right in there with a bunch. Italy joined the Germans because I think they're pretty well afraid of it. And I think it was a forced partnership there. Their army and navy and air force and everything never was top notch. Now their participation was mostly in Africa. And,
in North Africa.
North Africa, yeah. And that was worth quite a bit to the Allies because there's so much oil down there, and that cut us off from the oil. But then we'd have to drop back here a bit. And we'd go to these movies and see these news clips and stuff like that. They were quite extensive too. They didn't just one flash on the screen and it was over with. They'd run 15, 20 minutes with actual pictures. And back in the late 30s, I can remember seeing it. We had a hospital ship on the Yangtze River in China. It had a huge red cross written on the top of it, so it could be seen from overhead from any distance away. As soon as you could see a ship, you could see that was a hospital ship. It was painted white. It had all sorts of markings and flags on it. It's just impossible to not know what that ship was doing there. And they were trying to rescue, especially the women and children out there, out of China, because the Japanese were just slaughtering them. You couldn't believe the slaughter that was going on there. And they'd set fire to these cities and burn the bridges so you couldn't get out, and they'd just slaughter them. That's all there was to it. Well, this Panay was the name of this ship, this hospital ship, Red Cross ship, if you will. It was sitting there in the river trying to take on all the wounded people and people in dire straits and get them out of there. And here come Japanese bombers and bombed it. And they didn't sink it, but they killed an awful lot of people. And some of them were Americans. It was, after all, an American ship. And the people working on it weren't necessarily Navy people or anything like that, but they were medical people, and then they, of course they had to have people to run the ship. And they, a lot of them died. They were terribly wounded and stuff like this. And there was the Axis, Italy, Germany, and Japan. Well, I don't know, it was rumored that Japan was over here buying up, there was mountains of old steel and iron laying around, and old combine machines, and old derricks, and automobile bodies and frames, and wrecks, girder work from buildings. There was millions of tons of that laying everywhere. Japan come over here, and now this is before Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. Several years, and people used to tell it like a joke. Well, they didn't really know, like no one really knew that this was the starting of a war, but they're kind of suspicious. And they said, well, they'll probably take that over to Japan, melt it down into bullets, and come back and shoot us with them. Well, everybody got a little laugh out of that, but it was ironic. That's exactly what they did with it. They built ships and everything else with it. They come over here and paid a few dollars a ton for that stuff, and they threw it in the hold of a ship and took it to Japan and melted it down and made whatever they needed.
Yeah.
And shell casings and everything you could think of. And then Germany, I don't know if there are very few people anymore. The word Bund, B-U-N-D, Bundist were these people, and they ran around in the United States. They rented movie houses, everything else, and they run movies, show you what Germany was going to do for us. Now, every one of them wore a khaki uniform, and they had armbands with a swastika on them.
Which didn't mean much at that time.
No, it was just a symbol, and joined several other symbols, you know. And I went to one movie one time, and the newsreel showed them where a couple of guys in the audience, they got up and were talking about what they were going to do for us, and why they were jumping on the countries of Poland and Czechoslovakia and all those countries. And a couple of guys in the audience jumped up and objected. Hey, this wasn't what this is supposed to be. Well, they had a gang of guys there just for that purpose. They grabbed them, and out in the street they went. And nothing ever happened.